Hi, welcome to this talk where I'm going to show you a very efficient way to create a beautiful and modern REST API on top of Odoo using the FastAPI framework. Today we are first going to look at what FastAPI is and also the OpenAPI documentation mechanism. Quickly look at the core of the Odoo internal API that we will use. And then, of course, the reason you are here is that you want to learn how to use them together. So that will be the core of the talk. I'll say a few words about how to test such an application and also give ideas about how to make it production ready beyond this demonstration code I'm showing today. I will briefly discuss different alternatives that exist and the trade-offs between them. And then finally, I will show you all the links that are necessary to take the best of this talk. There is a GitHub repo that will become available where you will get all the code that I'm going to show today. And then there will be a question and answer session that will be interactive. So good, let's dive in. First of all, a few words about me. I'm a founder of Axon, a software engineering company focusing on creating high-quality projects using open source and open standard technologies. We are an Odoo partner since about 10 years now. I'm an elected board member of the Odoo Community Association. And I'm also a pip committer, so I'm getting myself involved in the broader Python community. Great. So first, FastAPI, what is it? Well, it's a web framework created by a guy named Sebastian Ramirez, which is creating very nice tools like this one. And the particularity of this web framework is that it is leveraging the Python 3 type annotation mechanism as well as the pydantic library to create auto-documenting and validating data structure. The code you write using FastAPI is very compact and very intuitive to read, as I hope you will see in this example. So this is a fully working example, so you can save it in a file named main.py, for instance, and then you can run it like this. So what's in there? First, you create a FastAPI object. FastAPI object is an ASGI application, which is ASGI is the interoperability standard in the Python world for asynchronous web applications. So it's pretty well documented stuff. Then I create a partner object that I will reuse later, and this partner class has a few fields. And if you know Python type annotation, you will notice that it's fully standard Python syntax. So I declare that ID is an optional integer, name is a required string, bool is an optional boolean with a default value, and so on and so on. And in Python, type annotations like these do not influence the behavior of the interpreter, but they can be used by any kind of tools like type checkers to validate the correctness of the code, or IDEs to provide help and type completion, and by FastAPI to generate documentation, perform validation, and data conversion. When I have a partner object like this, I get a constructor for free, so I can initialize it like this by passing keyword arguments. And then the next important part of FastAPI is this kind of decorator which I can use to declare the endpoints of my REST services. So in this case, I say that I can do an HTTP GET of /partners, and that the response is going to be a list of partners. It's just a mock, so I'm returning an hard-coded list. with the Tom object I created before, a new partner I'm creating here. And as an example, I also pass a dictionary to show that FastAPI is smart enough to convert dictionaries to the requested output type on the fly. So it can be very useful. Then I can use path parameter like this, for instance. I can type them, so I have to guarantee that I will receive an int and nothing else. And if what the client is sending is not an int, the client will request a client error saying the parameter is invalid. So that's all automatic and done for me. I can return HTTP exception like not found. And to do a create, for instance, I can do an HTTP post on /partners and saying that the response is going to be a 201. And again, it's stomach, so I'm simply returning the input parameter. So this is just to give you an impression of FastAPI is. The documentation is very complete and very well done. So I encourage you to have a look at it. And when you have a program like this, you can run it and then you get auto-generated documentation at the /docs URL. And it looks like this. So you're probably familiar with it because it's based on Swagger or OpenAPI, which is a powerful interoperability standard for REST services. So basically, you can, when you have this kind of OpenAPI, you can use it very easily from basically any programming language. Besides this HTML documentation, there is a JSON file that fully expresses and declares all the endpoints and their input data and so on and so on. So in this case, I'm showing the details of the partner endpoint. The OpenAPI is generating a form here, so I can populate it and test it. I get the results, so I really can test interactively. And it's also nice enough to show me examples, so my client developers can easily understand how to use it and integrate that in their application. All right, so that's it for the FastAPI basics. Now, the Odoo internal API, well, I won't spend too much time on it. It should be pretty familiar stuff for any Odoo developer. The core of it is that you often receive an env object, which is an Odoo API environment. And when you have it, you can instantiate models to create new objects. You can browse existing objects by their ID, or you can do searches by using the familiar Odoo domain syntax. And the important part to use that inside a framework like FastAPI is to, of course, obtain an environment object. And actually, it turns out that it's pretty easy to create an environment object. The first thing you have to do is to initialize the Odoo library. And it's just one call. You call parse config. You can pass parameters or arguments, but if you don't, it will simply parse the Odoo RC environment variable to look at the configuration file and load the configuration parameters from there. When you've initialized, you need to load the registry. The registry is the representation of all the models and fields that are declared in the Odoo database. And here we'll get the database from the configuration file. Then to do anything useful, you need to create a database cursor. A database cursor is basically a wrapper around a Postgres cursor object, so you can use it to execute SQL statements and queries, commit or roll back the transaction, and so on and so on. And when you have it, you can create this famous environment object passing the cursor, a user ID that is going to be used to process the request, and a context which is empty in this case, but in which you could pass the user language or the user time zones or similar things. And then putting it all together to manage an Odoo transaction, it's actually only 4 lines with Odoo 15. You create the registry, passing the database name, and then it's important to call the check signaling function because this is the one that will automatically refresh the registry if, for instance, the Odoo process that also running on the database is modifying it, like when you install new apps on your Odoo database, the registry needs updating, and by calling check signaling, that will be done automatically for you at the beginning of each transaction, and only if needed. So in the normal case, it's very fast. It's also important for the cache. So if any other process running on the database do things that require cache invalidation, that will also do it for you automatically. And to be a good citizen, it's best to use this manage change context manager to do the other part. So if your application code is going to do anything that needs cache invalidations in other process, manage change is the mechanism to notify these other process and trigger that check signaling mechanism. And then a cursor, you create a cursor, and if you do that in a context manager, it will commit the transaction for you if and everything goes normally, and if an exception is going up, then it will do a rollback, and then you yield the new environment object as I shown before. And basically that's it. And to integrate this in FastAPI, first, it's important to note that this is for Odoo 15. Thanks to recent changes made by Raphael, this has become a little bit simpler. For other version, look at the repo where I've put a comment explaining what to do for other version. It's not very hard, but it's important. So to integrate that with FastAPI, we use the depends function of FastAPI, which is their dependency injection mechanism, which will basically call our Odoo env function on demand wherever it's needed and only once per request. And then I can simply use my new env object, and when I have it, we are just at home with our familiar Odoo API. So in this case, I'm doing a search with an empty domain to get all partners and doing the data conversion to return the expected data structure like this. Then we can play variations on this. So for instance, passing a query parameter is company. It's going to be an optional boolean with the default value of none. So if the client is passing an isCompany boolean, I can just extend my search domain, do the same search, and so on and so on. It will be automatically added to the interactive documentation, and then I get my curl example. So it will be this parameter simply declared in the function here will be added or processed as query parameter in the URL like this. Path parameters are very similar, so it's declared like this in the URL, and it will be automatically validated and converted to the requested type, so I don't need to worry about that. It's all cared about for me. And then I can browse my partner ID by its ID that I just received and convert and return the result. It's good practice to do some exception handling, because if I don't, any missing error will be returned as an internal server error, which is not very nice for the client. So catching missing error and returning a proper HTTP not found, or catching a Odoo access error and returning forbidden is best practice to do. You can do it inline in the code, or FastAPI has mechanism to do global exception handlers. And to write data, it's very similar. Once I get my env, I can use it as usual. And the transaction is managed by this Odoo end function, so I don't have to worry about it. It's going to commit automatically or roll back if there is any exception being processed in there. So a few words about testing. Testing, of course, is very important. Again, when you are going to migrate your Odoo version, it's important that you verify that your REST API continues to work as expected. So writing unit tests is very important for your clients. So integrating with the pytest framework, which is recommended for FastAPI, is very easy. You create what pytest called a fixture, which is created once for each test session. So we initialize the configuration, same principle, and we get the registry once per test session. And when I have one, I can obtain an environment once per test this time. And the difference is that I'm going to roll back whatever happens at the end of each test. So I'm sure I'm not polluting my test database. And then FastAPI is providing us with a test client class, which we can use to call the service in a test context. The particularity here is that I need to override this Odoo env dependency to let it use the same environment as the test. So any data that we prepare in the test is also visible in the application that is going to run in the same transaction. Ideally, you should wrap this around the save point also, so it's more predictable what was going to happen. But this is enough for simple tests. And when you have that, you can create the tests themselves. So you put them in a directory with file names prefixed with test. And then the test function also starts with test. And then it's pretty simple, very easy to read. You have an HTTP API. You can do a get, assert the response, get the JSON result. Here it should be a post, and so on and so on. You can run it like this, and again the repo will show all the example. So to go to production, you need to pay attention to authentication. There are various mechanisms using session cookie, JOT token, or something. FastAPI has very good documentation on how to do that. About authorization, I really recommend you use and leverage the Odoo record rule. So do not use the super user, use a dedicated user for your API, and make sure it has adequate record rules to check that it can only access the data it is authorized to. And to scale this, well, I must say that in regular situation, using the default configuration is going to work. If you have a little bit of load, pay attention. We don't use async because Odoo is not designed for that, so the requests are executed in a thread pool. So it's important to control the thread pool size and to add worker processes as needed. And I really recommend that you perform your own load testing, for instance, using Locust. Then, as promised, let me discuss a few alternatives. The first one is the native Odoo JSON or XML-RPC API. The good thing is that it native, it's out of the box, and it gives you access to all Odoo models. The problem is that it's too much, and it creates a very strong coupling with the Odoo internal data model. So it's difficult to learn for the client developers who don't necessarily need to learn the Odoo internals. And this coupling will create problems when you upgrade Odoo and the internal data model is going to change. So except for trivial cases, I really don't recommend to use that. Then there is the base REST module in OCA that was created by my colleague Laurent Mignon. It has similar features. It's using Marshmallow for data models. It can do automatic Swagger generation and so on. The advantage is that the API you create with that are extensible. That is, you can create derived Odoo module to extend existing service. And it's also a little bit easier to deploy because it's running inside the regular Odoo server. The drawback is that it's slightly more complex to use. So yeah, make your own opinion. And look at your use cases carefully. And then there is GraphQL. GraphQL is not REST, it's an alternative, but also using HTTP GET and POST to implement the services. It's more versatile than REST, but it's not extensible as base REST, and it's also a little bit harder to secure. You need really very strong record tools to use it. So to finish, here are the links to all the resources. I'm opening the demo repository and I'm going to be available for questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're well. I'm here with Stefan. Good evening, Stefan. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for your presentation. We have here a couple of questions to from some of the viewers. We can start here quickly with the first one. So, with this library, can we use the methods directly created in the Odoo models?
Yes, absolutely. Since what you get from the end, you get from the FastAPI dependency, you get regular Odoo record sets, and so you can do the creation and search as I showed, but you can also call model methods. No problem with that.
Okay, that's good. We have here a question that's quite long. So, from coding Dodo. So last time he tried to set up the setup. The initial call to Odoo registry function took a long time, so he couldn't put it directly in the methods. So he had to put the global registry in the FastAPI startup event, and he's asking if you encountered any similar problem.
Not really. Well, it's true that on the first call, when it's initializing a new registry, it can take a little bit of time to load the various add-ons. And if that's the case for your database, it can be good indeed to pre-warm the registry and to put it in the startup event. Yeah. But it's still important to keep the code that I showed to with the check signaling and manage change, because then the registry in your FastAPI program will be refreshed as necessary when there are changes in the running Odoo server. Yes. So
Okay.
you can actually do both, pre-warm in the startup event and then check if it's up to date at the beginning of each transaction. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Thank you so much, Stefan, for the question. We have here another one. Can we use the Python type annotations on the Odoo codes? Is this something that's possible to do?
Yes, actually, it's possible because the Python type annotation are actually not influencing how the Python interpreter is behaving at runtime. So only, for instance, as a documentation mechanism is totally valid to put type annotation in Odoo code. It can help with readability and even do some static type checking with that. So it's totally possible, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. We have here another question from Kaz. Does FastAPI allow to connect to foreign APIs to get data?
Well, FastAPI is first and foremost a web server library, so it's used to create APIs. But you are in a fully regular Python program, so you can use any Python library to call foreign APIs, of course. But I'm not sure I get the question precisely. But yes, it's regular Python code, so you can use anything you want to call external systems. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. We have here another question. First, thank you for your talk. It says, does this mean that you plan to stop actively working on the base REST in the future, or not?
No, not at all. Actually, we are maintaining base REST very actively. Actually, we had a sprint earlier this week where we've done quite a few nice evolution on base REST, and we really intend to continue maintaining it. Actually, the use cases are a little bit different. With base REST, you are creating Odoo modules, and the APIs you create with base REST can be extended with other modules. So that's the main interest of base REST. Due to that, it's a little bit more difficult to use to FastAPI, but when you need to create Odoo modules or APIs that are extensible by other Odoo modules, that's really the way to go. And FastAPI is interesting to quickly mash up APIs for specific customers, but it's not intended to do reusable code from other Odoo modules. Yeah. But we definitely maintain and will continue to maintain base REST. Yes, it's very important for us. Yeah.
Thank you, Stefan. I didn't think we have time for anything else. Thank you for your time once again. Thank you for your talk.